Good morning, good evening, good night, good afternoon, whatever time you're listening in, wherever you're listening from. Shout out to my Spotify listenership, Apple and Google Podcasts, and YouTube if you're watching in. Thanks for giving me a reason to get dressed. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here. Be present and recognize that it's now, right now. Whether your right now is working, flying, running, driving, be thankful we're alive, baby. Failure can be frightening. However, as Winston Churchill reminds us, success is all about going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. This is I Will Not Lose podcast, where we set out to prove everything is learned from failure, and we must persevere and recognize it as one step closer to success. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz. Let's jump right in. This is I Will Not Lose podcast. We're here with Michael Frassetto, activist, community man, nonprofit. We got event planner, Movement Moves Media. The list goes on, man. And you just keep adding every time I see you.
Oh, man, I appreciate that introduction. That's real nice. Very kind.
Oh, yeah. So you got a couple things coming up. We wanted to chat about that. I wanted to bring Mike on to have a conversation. I've known him through his activism and just kept in touch with him over the years. But then recently with Movement Moves Media, you had the Lehigh Valley Hip Hop Music Awards. That was a success.
That was, that was a big one. That was a culmination of many years. I would probably say about 5 years of getting to know the people, the movers and the shakers in the hip hop community in the Lehigh Valley. If I'm going to put on a show, I'm going to make sure that the right people are involved, or, as many as can be involved. I know at the end of the award ceremony, there was always, 2 or 3 people that we left off the list that, I wish would have been on, or I wish would have been more involved in the show itself. But man, when you talk about the last 20 years of, there wasn't really ever a awards show for the hip hop community.
No, you have the LVMAs, but hip hop was such a small category in it. And, big shout out to them for doing their thing and having such a large platform. I think, but people felt either underrepresented or like they didn't do due diligence in figuring out who was the movers and shakers. So what kind of work goes into that? Like you said, like figuring out who's who, because I felt you represented the Valley as a whole. You put me onto a ton of new music. I was just listening to music from there today, so it has a lasting effect. But
well, you know what, it was, building relationships and like just opening doors. Once you have a conversation with one person, they introduce you to other people, and it just kept going like that for 5 years. 5 years ago, we came out with Movement Moves Media, we produced a music video, Something's Gotta Give. And it was about the ending the gun violence here in Allentown. That was in 2018. We had Sonny George, Oso, and Fitted Cub. At the time, they were on that track, and instantly it went viral. We had like 75,000 views in the first 24 hours, and it just went on from there. They were on many different shows and radio stations to promote it, and that's kind of how we got into the music scene in the Lehigh Valley. And then I realized, man, we have such talented artists, musical artists here in the Lehigh Valley that really never got their recognition. Like there's some other industries that recognize the best people every year. But here we go. We had hip hop that's been around now for 50 years. And here in the Lehigh Valley, we have top-notch talent. And they never really were recognized at like a real legit award ceremony. Like you said, LVMA, you're right, man. Love them to death. Actually, they're the ones who introduced me into Arts Quest. Back in 2018, 2019, they wanted me to get like our demographic and the hip hop into the LVMAs, but it just didn't work. And then COVID happened, and they stopped their show, and then we were left. So we were like, hey, we got to bring it back, and if we bring it back, we're gonna highlight hip hop.
Yeah, real cool. I like the different categories that you had, highlighting different aspects of it. And then the show itself brought on beatboxers, dancers, represented the 5 elements of hip hop. And, it was entertaining.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. We tried to put on a good show. Yeah, the beatboxer took a lot of people by surprise. That was Javar's Brick House from Deer. You know, a lot of people.
Yeah, Husky Pride. I went to school with him.
Yeah. You know, everybody said that. Like, we made one post, and I was like, "Hey, anybody know a beatboxer?" And everybody tagged him. Everybody tagged him, and man, he was so cool to work with. He was just so humble and just so appreciative to have that stage and to show his talent in hip hop. Because, you know, beatboxing, ain't many people left doing beatboxing. You know, it's
no,
for
like, sure.
Yeah,
that was awesome. A cultural thing, man. He would beatbox for our rap ciphers back in Deeruff in the hallways and stuff, like after gym and everything. Yeah. Back when we were all writing and stuff. But it's awesome. It's such a creative outlet, and you know, I took a break from music myself, but to see people that have continued for 10, 15 years, and you really have to do it. Like we had Tug McGraw on the, and I just want to throw a disclaimer out. Shout out to everybody. If we don't name you, we're going to be dropping a ton of names this podcast of great music to check out and different things going on in the scene. But, you know, when I had Tug on, he's talking about a fool's errand and, you know, kind of creating and working on perfecting a craft. You'd think that it would line up with talent, like all these talented people would be put on or be funded somehow or fed into the machine, but it doesn't happen like that.
No, it doesn't happen that way. And you see that here in the Lehigh Valley. I mean, our talent pool here is equal to and a lot of people say this, you know, this is how I came to this conclusion, but equal to Philly and New York, you know, scenes. The talent here is equal to that. It's just we don't have the foundational support to be able to support those type of artists in this area. Like you'll get grant money and you'll get organizations that are just there to help local artists in like Philly and the bigger cities in New York and stuff like that to help uplift them, to connect them, to network them with the right people in the music industry. We don't have any of that here in the Lehigh Valley, very little. And a lot of it wasn't definitely geared towards the hip hop community. So that is actually part of the reason why, you know, we started Movement Moves Media back in 2018, because we just saw this big void in the Lehigh Valley of no organizational support for local artists.
Okay, yeah. So go on Movement Moves Media for a little bit. For those listening, you know, multifaceted. You have the events and also the video production services, right?
Yeah. So, you know, marketing is king in my mind, you know, and, you know, you could tell a story, you got to create content. And if people relate to that, they'll be interested enough to follow. So that's really where it started. And then when you talk about content creators like yourself too, I mean, we got some very talented content creators here that aren't funded either, you know, here in the Lehigh Valley, especially Allentown, and the ones that I, you know, work with closest for the last 5 years. You know, you got Hitman, Angel.
Yeah,
you got,
shout out to Angel.
Yeah, you got Tim Foster, We Live TV, and you got Chris Ormeno from Illionaires. You know, they're just workhorses, and they perfected their craft from the last 5-6 years when I first met with them to now. Their talent has increased tremendously, and
I got to throw another name in the hat. My guy Nick Anseo.
Nick Asenjo.
Oh
yeah, of course. He's top notch, and he won the award at the hip hop show.
Yeah, definitely. That was probably the toughest. Like all the music decisions were hard, but that video one was tough because everybody has a style. Like you can tell a We Live TV video. You know what I mean? It's got that like grunge look to it. It's dope, man. It's dope.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned that they all have their artistic. In each one of their videos, you could see their artistic capabilities or their artistic mind kind of come out in their videos. You could tell the difference of how they cut it or what type of filters they use at different times. You could tell who it is once you start to look at their videos. But yeah, I mean, Nick Asenjo, and then even if you go further back now, you got Jack 9.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah. You know,
big shout out to Jack 9.
Yeah, you know, Josh is, the Godfather. I would say probably the Godfather in this area for videography and editing.
Yeah, you listen to any podcast, anybody that says it, they shout him out as somebody that was either doing it at the time, and nobody could doubt the level that he's taken it to. He's got an artist nominated for the Latin Music Awards.
Yeah,
he's promoting that now.
Yeah, he's top notch in the world. Yeah, and to be able to work with him, because he worked with me creating content before I've been doing activism work for since 2016, 2017, 2006, 2007.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. So, it's going on 18 years now. And I got connected with Josh somewhere around 2010 or 11 is when I, started, dealing with him. And he was just so, like all the other content creators, he was just so humble and just so willing to work with us, especially when it dealt with the youth. He wanted to work and just say, hey, you know what, this is what I can do. And then kind of opened up our eyes that if you really want to push a message, you're going to need content. You're going to need content.
Oh, yeah. And it never ends.
Never.
But go on to some of that with the activism, some different stuff that you've done. Like I said, that's how I had heard of you or heard about you. Whether it be notorious or infamous, whatever you want to say, you were shaking things up in the city. You weren't scared to make moves or call out systems.
Yeah, the truth is, I was just always like that. I was, and I don't know why I was like that, but I always questioned things. If somebody told me something, I would want to know why. Like, how did you get to that conclusion? And enough to try to teach people this stuff. Like, why? Where's your information coming from? I was like that ever since I was in elementary school, and I got in trouble for it because then when, you push back at such a young age, the authorities or the teachers and stuff like that in school, they're like, why are you questioning me? A lot of them, especially in the 90s, it was still conservative. And I went to Parkland. I was born on the east side. My dad and my dad's dad and when my mom came from the Philippines, they all came here to Allentown. But then we were born. Me and my sister were born by Keck Park, and then we before we started school, around 3-4 years old, my parents moved about 2 blocks on the other side of the border for the school districts. They saw the school district getting into some trouble and stuff, 80s, 90s. They said, hey, this ain't for our kids. They moved over to Parkland. And, at Parkland in the 90s, I was going to school with farmers and stuff like that. It was very different back then. Really, I was one of the kids. I was the only Filipino. I was of color. There might have been in my elementary school 2 others, so, and then I'm the one questioning them. So I got in trouble, I got in trouble a lot. So that activism was just always part of me. My dad was part of a union. He was a mailman in Bethlehem for 30 years. And, he questioned authority too, management, why are they doing this? We should band together, to kind of have fair conditions for workers, so that was just always in my mind. And, I thought there was no problem with it. I thought, when people band together at a young age, when people band together, good things can happen. And, it got into me going through high school, college, and then that's when I got involved into activism work. My second year of college, I started with the Weed and Seed Foundation. It was President Bush had this Weed and Seed Foundation, and they had a program here in Allentown. 2006, 2007 was the last years of it, because 2008 the president changed. And it was the last year of the Weed and Seed grant money. And at that time, it was Sam Martinez was the executive director of that. And some people that are still in the activism world and nonprofit world today, that are still around today, I remember meeting them, almost 20 years ago now, back in the Weed and Seed Foundation. And the first thing was on Ridge and Tillman, we opened up a boxing gym. We opened up a boxing gym that Louis Melendez was the head trainer for there. And he trained me a little bit in boxing too when I was a teenager and stuff like that. And to be able to, give back and try to set that up for him and set up the chairs, sweep everything, welcome guests in on the grand opening and stuff like that. It was just like really exhilarating for me. And I was like 19 at the time, and I was like, wow. And I was a troubled teen. So, doing something good like this and feeling like, wow, when people come together, a community can really do special things that really affect people. Ever since I was 19 on that first project, it was no turning back. I was just like, I want to do this all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great when you could get something back from giving. Whether I don't think you could really go wrong, at least for myself, giving content out for free, giving education. I always try to support local artists, not just by sharing or liking their stuff, but like literally hiring them. Like, I have a few artists in my inbox right now that I'm looking through their portfolio, trying to sub some work out to them. And, I'm buying music if I get a chance to, or leaving the streams on constantly to help boost numbers. But I know that artists don't get as much for that, even just reaching out to people specifically. But for you to get something back from the activism and get some sort of joy to keep doing it, you're in for the right reasons. Like, it's not for the notoriety, it's not for your picture in the paper.
Yeah, no, actually, to be honest, I despise that stuff. It's really an intrinsic motivation for me. Just that feeling you get when you give back, and you're not really looking for anything in return. You're just looking to do the right thing. People go like, if somebody's looking to do the right thing all the time, they're looking for something. No, there's people out there that just want to do something that's, that's right. Or, that feels good. So yeah, I've been, going on almost 20 years now. And, it's odd that we're talking about this. And I don't talk about this too often, but like, I always feel, especially like the last 10 years, maybe, I always feel like I got one foot out. Like, I'm going to step away from activism and the nonprofit world. And I don't know. Then I think about it. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? I guess concentrate on myself, concentrate on my family, and, maybe try to make more money. There was a time where I tried to make more money. And that was, after I did the walkouts for Allentown School District back in 2015. Obviously, I got fired after that. And it had a legal battle and everything like that, which we could get back to. But I was facing 9.5 years for that. If they wanted to throw the book at me. But
yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't even know it came close to them throwing the book at you like that.
Well, it's not that if they wanted to, Pennsylvania law, they could have thrown that 426 counts of corruption of minors. They could have thrown that at me concurrently, and it would have been, 30 days for each count, 9.5 years, whatever. But the chance of that happening with me having a pretty clean record, it wasn't really gonna happen. But still a little scary.
For sure.
When you're going in front of the judge. So I tried to make more money one time right after that when I got fired, and I got into the solar industry, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna put my head down and try to make as much money as possible, and I'm gonna grind. And I've been in the solar industry 8 years now, but in those first 2 years after teaching for 6 years, 2016, 2017, 2018, I worked really hard in the solar industry and made a lot of money. But during that time, it was probably the most unhappy that I was. And I realized it's not sustainable. I don't want to just, burn and turn and make a lot of money and work. The money wasn't what made me happy. It's nice getting that check and you have more financial freedom, but I don't want to waste years doing that. And that's what was happening. And, being able to not be happy and then bring that into the house and everything every day and not really be present in the moment with your family and stuff. It's just not something I didn't want to continue to do. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool that you made that choice, though. I mean, at least you got to taste it, you got to taste and see on the other side that it doesn't work out that well, There's always things you want to do. I realize is it your first kid?
Yeah.
You have a 2-year-old?
2.5, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. That'll change your perspective on everything, too.
Oh, yeah, you're telling me.
I think about and it's great because luckily my son, my kids are older, but my son is into making music. He's a singer, and so we got the studio right over here for him, and he's been on the podcast, so it's cool. He was on the app trying to figure out, he's into producing and trying to mix with his vocals. I'm like, that's a great age to get into it, like 13,
He's 13?
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah.
You ask a lot of these, 7th, 8th grade, you ask a lot of these local artists, when did they start? And that's cool. But, I wanted to get back to, it's amazing to see that you had some sort of adversity to work through, because especially like activism, there's a lot of popularity in activism. Like when somebody sees you as the person that can get their voice heard, you're like the megaphone. And they're feeling a pain, but they're too scared to go against the powers that be or whatever. You become that beacon of light. Like there's a lot of really popular activists,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree that, I mean, it's the reality of it is it's a burden, it's a big mental burden. That's part of the, to be an activist, that's part of the thing that a lot of people, they try to glorify activism. It is not it's not an easy life to choose. If you want to be an activist, the pressures that come on you, because, you got those systems that you're talking about, the people in power, that they're in power and they see somebody that could, move 1,000 people, in the streets and question what they're doing. You're obviously on their hit list. They don't want you around, and that, especially in Allentown, it's a very small clique that kind of runs this city, who like chooses what happens and when it happens. And you piss off one or two of them, they're all mad at you, and they're all gonna shun you, and they're all gonna kind of not want to deal with you, and then that just makes life a lot harder. It's harder to navigate then. But then and that happened to me. I realized that happened to me before the walkouts, 2013, 2014, and then when we did the Allentown School District walkouts, it was like, hold on, I get this game. They'll never accept somebody who's not in their circle already. They're not going to accept new people in. They right. want to do what they want to do. So that's why at that time, I've realized it's okay. It's okay. What I feel is this is right. The kids were screaming for help. Allentown School District was in shambles, just almost like it is now. It's maybe a little bit better, but it really never really recovered. Those are some of the worst years in Allentown School District. And we could talk about the mismanagement of money, $12 million gone missing, 420 teachers or staff that was let go that year. There were 16 rape cases with children.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know about this. A lot of people thought, oh, that walkout, oh yeah, they were they didn't know why we were protesting, and that was the thing. Like even the 69 News Morning Call, when we would say the stuff constantly over and over, they would never write about it.
Yeah, I noticed that from my perspective on an outside. I remember that day. I remember I drove by Alan when you were out there with the megaphone. And as I went to the news, because I want to see what's happening and stuff, and I'm sitting there with my business partner, and he's like, yeah, they're mad they don't have books. And I'm like trying to look for a message. Like, you got my attention. What's the message? And 69 News, it felt like they were grabbing, I don't even know if it was 69 News. The report that I saw seemed like they were grabbing people that didn't necessarily either know the reason why, or it wasn't like a unified, it was just, so you get that out. It was almost like Occupy Wall Street, where they're not going to grab the brightest people who understand the message and give them a microphone, because that just escalates the protest,
Yeah.
They're going to have whatever message it was. So I remember I reached out to you back then. We could probably go back to our Facebook messages, and I was asking what's going on with that.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. I learned a lot, during that. And one of the things I learned is to create your own content at that time. I realized the importance of that and creating your own news and your own narrative, because if you don't create that content, the powers that be or whoever runs media in your local area, they get to choose whatever narrative that they want. And that's what happened at that point. We just didn't have enough manpower. We didn't have enough content. We didn't have enough organization funding to be able to do that. So then after the court case and stuff, shout out to Gary Aztec, if you, and the ACLU, if you ever need a good lawyer, I mean, he's a legend in Pennsylvania. People who know, criminal law and civil activist law in civil liberties in Pennsylvania. I mean, Gary Aztec is a legend, living legend. And he came on, and a case like this would be money, lots of tens of thousands of dollars. And he did it pretty much pro bono. Because he loved the cause. He agreed with the cause. Anyway, he got us off, and guy, man, you should have seen the court. You should have seen the courtroom when he walked in, because I met with him personally before, obviously, before the case started in June of 2016. But we had the Allentown School District had nobody in their stands, and we had about 60 to 70 people in our stands. And we're all sitting down, and my lawyer walks in late, and he's wearing a cowboy hat with shades, like those rainbow shade glasses. He has a big gray and black beard that goes down to about, his chest. And he walks in with cowboy boots and spurs on. And he comes in with this big paper bag, and he puts it right down. And instead of going down to his seat, he goes straight up to the judge. And we're all sitting down, we're waiting, it's going to get started soon. Yeah. He goes to the judge's bench. It was Judge Karen Devine. And he pulls out of this bag a gallon of honey, a gallon jar of honey. He and gives it to the judge. She says thank you and puts it under her bench, and then starts the trial. Later, I realized he's the president of the Lehigh Valley Beekeepers Association. So he gave her a gallon of honey and we started the case, the trial, and it was almost like a comedy hour. He had the people rolling and laughing because on his cross-examination of the principals and the people from Allentown School District. Oh man, he was just so funny, and it was just kind of made like a mockery out of it. It was just like, there's no way this kid, supporting these students should be going to jail for this, And it ended up being, I got found guilty of 3, but they were dropped to summary offenses, so it was just a fine. And I remember paying my first fine at that time, and I was broke. I put all the money we had, all the money I had into the cause. Yeah. And the first payment comes, it was a fine of $550. I didn't have that money back then, man. Teachers make whatever. People think teachers make money. We made $9 an hour. That's what it ended up being, where I was working 60, 70 hours a week. But I paid my first $75. Secretary comes out and goes, just wait. Goes back to Judge Karen Devine and comes back out, and she goes, the judge says you don't have to pay anymore. So I just paid $75 and that was it.
There you go, man.
Yeah.
There you go. But it's the lesson learned. And that's what my listeners tune in for. Like, we go with the whole success because everybody wants to hear the person that's, protesting at the Super Bowl and has 1 million followers on Instagram. Like, let's focus on the stories like in the beginning. You're at it 20 years now. You're young, you're healthy. You might got another 20, 30 years at doing this. So who knows what you can change and what you can move. But even just to be able to have that recognition without the community. I mean, you have Reggaefest coming up. Mm-hmm. This isn't the first time you've done that. I saw the videos from successful events. How many years now?
Of Reggaefest?
Was last year the first or second?
No, this is going to be the 4th year of Reggaefest. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we're looking for a big one this year at Steel Stacks. Arts Quest has been great. Cassie Hilgard, Patrick Brogan over there at Arts Quest, and a lot of other staff members, man, they've been just so great to Movement Moves Media. I know, they brought us on, seeing that we could help them with their DEI goals. And we've been doing a good job bringing them a new demographic that they had a tough time reaching. And it's been great having the partnership with them. And, we have about 5-6 shows there a year, but Reggaefest is definitely our flagship. It's happening July 6th this year. We actually just got done with the lineup. The lineup is amazing, especially if you're in the reggae scene. We're actually going to go from 2 stages to 3 stages this year. And we're looking for about 15,000, 20,000 people this year. Last year we had over 12,000. And our goal is to grow it to the largest free reggae festival in the country. And in about 3 to 5 years, we think we could hit that goal. There's one that, we're not in competition with them, but there's one down in Atlanta, Georgia every year called Be Reggae. And they have the largest free reggae festival in the country. And we're trying to be just like them.
That's dope. Yeah. That's super dope.
It's a great genre, reggae, and it's
it goes well with activism.
Yeah, that ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? And it's just it's happy vibes. It's speaking about some real stuff. You're right. It goes with activism too. So maybe that's why I always connected with it. It's just such the feeling you get, the atmosphere you get when you go to Reggaefest is just of pure love. It's like a safe place to be at. Like you don't really have to worry. Like everybody is there for a good time and making sure that everybody else around them is having a good time. And it's just that energy that I realized is so powerful. When you could get people from different classes and from different demographics in the city into the same arena or under the same roof, that's when the magic happens. Because when you have just a hip hop show or just a country show or just a art mural show, the people from that community go to that show. So basically we're segregating ourselves from our own arts community. We're separating ourselves. But when you could find something where you could bring all those different sub-communities together, that's when the real networking happens. And that's when the real, what I like to call just the real magic happens. That's when people from a different walk of life, a different class, could meet somebody there and make a connection where then they collaborate for years to come and create a new relationship that maybe would have never happened if they didn't go to an event like that. Yeah.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. I was just thinking about the level of exposure that a new artist needs. Like, you're no longer discovering a new artist from a random Facebook post and saying, oh, I'm going to dive into that right now. Even there's projects that I want to check out. Like, I've been really into Johnny Bill's latest project. And I saw the marketing for that super long ago. I had heard of who he was and never went in and checked into his music. So I'm thinking that's just one example of somebody who it took a while. But even through the music awards, that put me on to a few people, just tapping back into the local scene, listening to podcasts that, these artists aren't afraid to go out on different podcasts and connecting with them on that level. It's kind of like, all right, now I want to hear what you have to say in this sort of music or something,
Yeah, man. And like I said, we agree on this. The talent pool here in Lehigh Valley is top notch. I remember we had a show with Cruise Control, Johnny Bill's, a group, Alex Cruz, who grew up here. He was actually friends with my cousin growing up and going to school, and then he moved down to Tennessee. But he's still doing his thing and managing it. And Cruise Control is a great team. And we had a show in July at Arts Quest, and we had some and these are, younger hip hop people. We had, a bunch of Cruise Control there. We had Macville there, and
shout out to Macville.
Yeah.
I discovered him this year too.
He's top notch too, man. And then you look at his pedigree and where he came from. He came from, people who started hip hop here in the 90s here, and he's the offspring of that. So yeah, he's definitely got it running through his blood, and it shows. Same thing with Bez Music, but we had a show in Arts Quest and July, and I had some old school hip hop people there in attendance. We had about 200, 250 people there. And there were some old school hip hop people that came out from Allentown, Bethlehem. And you could tell, it's a different generation, the baggier pants, the fitteds, there's like, the gray on their beard and hair. I'm like, oh man, this is how I grew up. Yeah, exactly. And, they were sitting around, standing around and listening to these new generation hip hop artists with live bands backing them up. It wasn't just them. They had real live music playing behind them. And, I'm walking around, and socializing with the people in attendance. And they're like, yo, who are these people? Like I go to a show down in Philly and it's the same level here. Yeah, man, it's great. So, I mean, Cruise Control is doing their thing, Black Dre, Eric Rose, Alex, Johnny, that's some of the top notch talent here in this area, especially, man, when you could perform with live music and live instruments backing you, that's a whole different level. That's knowing music, at a higher level. Yeah.
I feel like Johnny was talking about that on a podcast about the live. I'm sure he's done more live music than just one, but he was talking specifically about playing with a band. So that's super cool. Yeah, the performance is at the actual thing. Shout out to Quasa the artist. If not for that snow, we would have had his episode dropping. We still got to record. I got him on the schedule.
Yes. But, yeah, he's a real talent too, man. Love him.
I discovered him. I actually ran into Quasa at the Americas Hotel. He was shooting a wedding and I was there. I think I was picking up a check or something like that. And I saw his camera and we just got to talking. So I was actually filming too. And I have my little cell phone on the gimbal and stuff. And he's got like the Black Magic with the whole rig. And I was like, I put mine away and I was like, so what you got there? And it was funny. But then we ended up, you realize you have a ton of mutual friends and then you see him at Empower 610 Day and you start listening to the music. And for a while, I was even, I got to get back into it, but I was playing that gospel music, like literally just playing his album front to back, All Praises Due, in the morning when I got up and getting ready. So it was, it's nice that, I mean, it's out there, it's free, and music lives like forever. So even like Phase One dropping 4 albums last year, that gave me something to listen to constantly. And then each of his artists have back catalogs, so you could go down a rabbit hole. I mean, I'm just waiting for somebody to have heard the music awards and just say, okay, cool, somebody curated what they voted on as the best. Let me just start there, because it gets so deep. I mean, even if you go back to artists that you'll see that like, I don't want to say left the area, but, they're on tour and they're touring the world, King Magnetic, Whitney Payton, you know what I mean?
Yeah. We reached out to them too. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. But it's all a Lehigh Valley music thing.
And Lehigh Valley, when it comes to music, it had that pedigree. It was a haven for music back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, because anytime some of the top artists, whatever genre you're talking about, when they were on their tours and they went from Pittsburgh or to Philadelphia to New York, Lehigh Valley's in the middle of all of that, so they would stop here and have shows. So there was always top-notch music in this area, where every weekend there was some top-notch talent in the country or the world that was playing here. And then it kind of went away in the 90s, early 2000s, and I feel like it's on its way back up. It's just
absolutely,
we need that organizational support, but that comes, I strongly believe, that comes from a grassroots collaboration, where the independent artists that we're all talking about now, where they work together to be able to uplift not only themselves, but the other artists that are very talented too, that just don't really get the recognition. I think that grassroots collaboration needs to happen in order for us to get some eyes on us, where there's real donors and real grant money that is there to support the entire movement. And I think it'll happen. I hope it happens.
What do you think stops it? Is it like egos? Is it?
Yeah, you always hear that, that egos are there to stop it. But I wouldn't say that it's just egos. You
Yeah,
know?
no,
Yeah.
it's not. It's
a
a
lot
mix
of
of things.
It's a mix of things.
Like I had Gil Thompson on here, local rapper, and he was talking about how important it is to have a team, but a lot of the times in like the 90s, early 2000s, everybody wanted to be the rapper. You know what I mean? Like you can't have a band with 4 drummers. Well, maybe you can. I'm sure there's Slipknots and all this sort of stuff out there, but you know, it's figuring out what your lane is. Like I think early in my career, you know, I was in audio engineering with Naughty Nuisance, who was nominated as a best producer.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
You know, that was probably, I don't know, 2010, maybe a little bit earlier. And then I sat there and I said, man, I can only engineer music for like, I don't know, 2 hours, but I could design for like 8. I'm just going to work on doing stuff for artists, mixtape covers and, you know, nightlife club flyers. But that's my contribution to this area. Like I hope at some point somebody would say, all right, I've done a lot of logos for this area. So even if somebody doesn't say he's the nightlife flyer guy, you know, they might hold somebody else as the king of that. I've literally branded businesses. You can drive around the valley and see my artwork, you know, all down Hamilton Street or something like that. You got to kind of figure out what your lane is and what talent you can bring to doing that, you know, like I hope I'm making sense.
100%. Yeah. You know, that's team building. That's team building 101. You know, when it came to me building this nonprofit movement, Moves Media, back in 2019, I knew that when I was building the board. You know, we can't have all the same people, you know, here on the board, you know, that are talented in the same genre. We need people from other, you know, that are professionals or experts in different things. Some in marketing, some in social media, some in performing, some in video editing, some in photography, some in. We have an elder on the board who's 92 years old, who's sharp. He's just amazing. Walter Beach. He played actually. He played in the NFL. Back with Jim Brown on Cleveland. He was a cornerback.
Wow.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. And, you know, we have Nice Jones, who's on the board, and he's always been a part of, you know, always in the background of the things that I did in activism. You know, to be honest, I feel like I wouldn't be here without him. So, you know, so I had to build a board that had all these different experts in different fields and have them work together. And that's the tough part. So when you say that question, you know, why hasn't that happened here with artists in the music scene in the Lehigh Valley? I think that level of collaboration, of building the team and knowing your lane, like you said, people do this. This is your section to take care of, and then have other people, hey, this is your section, this is your section. But if we all work together, if we all do our part right, it's going to run like a well-oiled machine. And I haven't seen that yet. I feel like we're getting closer and closer in the last 5 years, but we still got a lot of work to do to get there.
Well, maybe social will help it out. You know, I think there's a lot of work to do, but if you think about the fact, like think about Phase One and Tug McGraw, I keep bringing them up, but they connected through MySpace. And back then you had to everybody had a MySpace, but like you weren't just out networking with people in your area like that. Like nowadays kids know people from other geographies just through their profile, through TikTok and stuff. So I always like to think my son's generation of content creators has more eyes out there. I mean, maybe it's more saturated, but I don't know. The egos will always come into place, but I think it's possible. And I think there's tons of teams doing great work and putting out what they can. The other thing too is we got to support them. Like we got to go to shows and buy merch and share the music, you know, like there's some onus on the consumer for why somebody's not able to do nothing but create music. You know, it doesn't mean they're bad.
Mm. Yeah. You know, and I think, you know, you bring up a good point. You know, the consumer, I do believe that the consumer is getting more conscious, that they realize, you know, there's a push here now of getting away from the phone, spending more time in the moment instead of on your phone, even though the phone has taken over many people's lives, mine included. But I think we got into that so deep in the last 20 years or so, even in 25 years, that I think there's a social movement to try to get away from that and then spend more time building relationships with the people right in front of you or right next to you.
Yeah.
And that's where real collaboration, I feel, from my experience, that's where things happen. When you put down the phone, when you put down, get connected, yes, that's a great way to get connected. But when it comes to really building a relationship with somebody and working together where you trust that person and that person trusts you, that trust is going to happen in an in-person meeting. In-person meeting, get to know them well, maybe even get to know the family, show them that you care and they care about you. And that's when you could really, really work with somebody and know that, hey, I don't have to deal with an ego. I don't have to worry about, should I trust this person or not? I knew this person now for 5-6 years. We're working together. Everything he says is his word. Everything I say is my word. And we're going to keep building together. That's when those connections become really powerful. And I really feel that the only way that those connections can become that powerful is if people spend more time like this, person to person.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
That's very well said. There's a reason why I have the studio here. I have the tech to do live interviews or whatever, but I don't shout out to everybody that does Zoom podcasts. You can bring great guests from all over the place, but it's just not the same conversation. It's not, it's, those connections are definitely lost, but
I mean, I could say it right here, man. This is the deepest conversation you and me ever got into.
Absolutely.
We never sat down like this and talked for an hour about some of these, conversations. We had some small talk here and there for the last, 8-10 years, whatever. But we're actually sitting down, a few feet from each other and talking about some serious topics. When was the last time that happened between me and you?
No.
Yeah. So thanks. Thanks for setting this up.
Definitely. I remember it's probably the first conversation we had that you weren't in a suit. I remember in the Vegan Butcher. Shout out to the Vegan Butcher. But so you got DJ Focus podcast coming up Thursday, right? You gonna be on there?
Kaleem, and Quana,
shout out to Quana Tatted and Kaleem. They invited me on. It's Thursday, right? I'm going. Yep, I'm going over to his studio out in Easton, I believe it is. And I've been watching it, and he's I'll tell you a story about him. So actually, the 50th anniversary of Hip Hop Awards ceremony that happened in October, just a few months ago, that we had at Arts Quest. The day before it, we had a pre-party, red carpet set up, and we had it at Main Gate. And I remember that. Yeah.
And there, in the middle of it, there was a fight on stage.
I heard about this. Go ahead. Yeah.
There was a fight on stage, and everybody saw it. It's not like, people saw it. It's not like it was a secret. It was like a real punches were thrown and stuff like that. It was between the two DJs. It was a DJ Menace and Baseline. And, they were, I think there was some blood boiling between them over the last few months or something like that. And I guess somebody ticked somebody off stage, and it just ended up
allegedly. Allegedly.
Yeah. Anyway, man, in the middle of it, Menace walks out, Baseline walks out, and I'm outside talking to people, and all of a sudden the music just stops and I'm like, all right, maybe he's changing the track. He never lets the music stop. And then people come like, yo, man, you see what happened on stage? I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, they got in a fight. We hate fights. Why is it happening? I'm like, oh my God. All of a sudden, in 8 minutes, the music starts playing again. And this is after Menace storms out, Baseline storms out. The music starts playing again. And I'm like, oh, wow. Wait, hold on. Who's playing the music? Yeah. And freaking Kaleem is up there on stage playing music from his phone.
Yeah.
And he became the DJ for the rest of the night. Everybody
Through
went
Bluetooth.
through Bluetooth. Everybody else was like leaving and mad, like, oh, the music stopped. He started playing the music. Everybody went inside and everybody stayed the whole night. Had a great time. He played great music. He kept the energy going. And for him just to be there in person and be like, oh my God, I got a lot of music on my phone. Let me play something. And to save that night, man, I'll never forget that, man.
That's crazy. Yeah, I was over there. I'm trying to help him get some stuff going with the multiple camera angles and stuff. Help him out with the tech, and he was telling me that story about that. So, yeah. But it was cool. We did, at least this Thursday, the multiple cameras won't be set up, but we got to just connect for an hour and talk about different things. And I had been on his show for 2 hours and we didn't connect, like just being in the shop working on stuff like that. So it was cool. I had put something out. I don't know, my this will probably air in a few weeks from now, but I lost my hard drive, or it's at the shop with like 3 fully done episodes recorded on it. So I didn't have anything to drop last night and I was going to let it skimp, but then at like 9:30 I'm like, fuck it, we're going live. And I just recorded, no mic, just straight to camera. Like I was sitting here, but I just like whipped something together and was talking about how I'm allowed to make a misstep over this amount of time, but I have to remember why I got into podcasting. Like, it wasn't to feed the algorithm. I don't really care about popularity. Like, it's cool that people know what I do and I love giving a platform. But you go back to the first episode, I started all this to help promote Gil Thompson's music. You know, so when people tell me I don't support local or I don't support artists, I'm like, nobody creates a show and brings artists on for a year. Because I can't always buy their music, you know, I'm always donating time and service and stuff. But there's some people you'll definitely have to connect me with. I'm sitting here wondering, we talked off camera about how we have close to 300 mutual friends on Facebook. And I'm like, there's no way that's possible. If I go through my messenger right now, just people who are in my inbox, you mentioned a whole bunch of them. I got Phase One in here, I've got, Johnny Bills, I just reached out to him. I've got Kaleem Bailey. I got Quesa, Angel, Tim Foster, Quantitated. I mean, not to put everybody's business out, but we talk to the same people, you know? So I'm glad you were able to come and hop on my show. I wanted to go through, I wrote notes and we haven't even used them. It's been a great conversation, man. Yeah,
it's natural. And you know, it's natural because I mean, like you said, we kind of like, you know, knew each other, you know, for 8-10 years. You know, we knew what each other was doing, and you know, to be able to sit down, you know, I felt like this was going to be a natural conversation because we had a lot to talk about over the last 10 years.
For sure. Well, for the more recent, is there anything like, how are you building and learning from your failures with Reggaefest? And like, is there anything you're going to do different for LVA Music Award, or sorry, not LVMA, for Hip Hop Awards next year?
Good questions. I mean, I'm really, the people that work with me know this. I'm really self-critical about the things I do. In some ways, I'm a perfectionist, but kind of laid back perfectionist, if that makes sense. Kind of oxymoron. But I always, and I think it's a bad thing, possibly. But after every show, my first thoughts, I did about 120 shows, 130 shows almost in the last 18 years or whatever. And after every event, my mind automatically goes to, all right, what went wrong? Mm-hmm. And how can we make sure that doesn't happen again? How can we be better for next time? And that's such a buzzkill when you're sitting with the people who just ran the whole show with you, and your first thing that you bring up is, wow, what a great night. You know, I say the small stuff, you know, 3 positives to negative. But my real thing is, I want to get to, all right, we messed up here, here, and here. How did that happen? Who was on that? How can we make sure that doesn't happen again? Such a buzzkill. Like, you know, everybody at the end of the show should be like, oh man, what a night.
For sure.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm learning that more and more as, you know, so every show you get into the experience of things, and experience really gives you the knowledge. You could read about theories and stuff like that and how to do things, but really you really learn when you experience and you actually do whatever you're trying to do, and you do it not just once, but you do it over and over and over and over again. That's why, you got your professors who are, 60, 70 years old, and they could just talk about this stuff because they've been doing it for 50, 50 years. So, when it comes to Reggaefest, there's a lot we can improve. That's just where my mind goes. And I want to improve it. And in order for us to get to that goal of becoming the largest free reggae festival in the country, we're going to have to keep improving. So, yeah, we got some things to do there. When it comes to the Lehigh Valley Hip Hop Awards, we're going to try to improve on that award show too. I will say this though, the award show was such a culmination over 5 years. We wanted to make sure we had our ducks in a row before we had this show. And once we had that opportunistic time, it was like, all right, we're ready for it. Let's do it. And the team was amazing. The whole team. I big shout out to, the marketing again. At the top of the list. Big shout out to Angel Ohea, Hitman. He took that whole show and he created every single piece of content for that show. There were 88 videos that he had to create. 88 videos. The longest one being about 5 minutes long. The shortest ones being 20 seconds or whatever. But he had to create 88 different videos to make that show happen, and he did it. Izzy Fletcher was great backstage. Rich Wilson, who helps out with One Earth Reggae Fest too. He's doing his thing. While I'm bringing this up, I have to mention too that all of them are pretty self-critical too, because when we had this conversation after the events, they were all like, for next year, let's brainstorm right away. And that, before I started on this tangent, I said there's pros and cons to talking about like the negatives right away after a show. But the one good thing is that everybody know and still feels the things that happened wrong and how to improve, because it just happened and everybody knows it happened who were running the show. So it's like, instead of waiting a few weeks to talk about it and then you kind of forget, it was not a big deal, but okay, but how can we not make that happen again for next year? How can we improve? That's why I think I do it after every show, even though it's a buzzkill.
I mean, sometimes the imperfections are dope.
True.
That was the point of me putting out like a half-assed episode and talking about how much work it is to put out a good, pristine episode. Like, people see us just having a conversation. Yeah. They don't realize my mind is wondering, is camera A still rolling? And like,
is the battery going?
But no, it's almost like I remember at one point at the LV Music Awards, I think what's his name was up. Meat Beats had won an award. And J Capital P didn't know that he was in the building. So he started going on how we're going to dedicate this to, and then Meat walks up on stage and the music drops and he was like, I didn't even know you were here. I could have sworn that was scripted. Like, that worked out so well.
That is so funny you bring that up. Oh my God. I love that moment. That was such a good moment. Yeah. Cause Meat, he's just, top notch, and he's been doing it for so long in this area. So everybody knows him. And you know what, for him to be able to do that, not come there early so people see him, just to come there and then walk up late to the stage. That's him, man.
Yeah. Him. And you know what and it's funny. Shout out to Meat. I'll tell you, he comes by and I'm going to take it back to Empower 610 Day. So they pull me on stage to give me flowers. I think you were one of the...
At West End, at the park.
At the Arts Park. Yeah. So I'm sitting there talking to Meat about, when are you going to be on the podcast? Let's set something up. And they go, and now we want to bring up Tony Ortiz. I had no idea that Nice and Lewis were going to give me flowers on stage. So I'm like, yo, I got to go. Hang on. So I go up, I get my award. Next time I see him is when he's coming off the stage at LV Music Awards, and he comes over and he whispers to me, "Keep doing your thing with the podcast. I'm gonna have a crazy story." He shows me the thing and just walks off, and I'm like,
"That is him, man. That's him."
Yep. But
he's great though, man. He's great, man.
Yeah, I gotta get him for coffee as well as this. But I don't know. You want to shout out where people can? Well, is there anyone else you want to shout out? Any new music you want people to check out? You never know who's listening.
Yeah, man. There's just so many. I mean, we had a really solid list at the Hip Hop Awards ceremony. We had a really solid list for nominees. And you still got the old school people in this area that put on and create good music, but this new generation is a great talent. There's too many to just point out and just say a few, but and this is why I think it's so important for the people that can put something together to put something together in a collaboration where it has to be noticed by big donors and funders and venues, because that's when you get the recognition. And I'm not against like the little bar shows and stuff like that, but when you go to like an established venue that has millions of dollars of funding backing it every year, it opens doors and the networking is at a different level that I realized from my experience, where some of those things where we can push some of our talent to become a superstar, regional or national superstar, that I believe that's where it's going to happen. I could be wrong. That might not be the best path. It might be the best path of just doing a crazy viral video and it going viral and then, catching a storm from there and signing with somebody. We don't really know. But I will shout out, if I could shout out one person, it would be Red McFly.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Red McFly.
Shout out Red McFly.
Because he doing the Hip Hop Awards ceremony, it was kind of like a history lesson for me, because I'm not particularly a music person. I'm really not. It's that's the honest truth. I'm more of an organizer. That's what I'm at. And I saw the talent in the music in this area, and I just got drawn to it. And I always saw the power in music. How, so in that type of art, it's very powerful. It could move communities. It's healing. So I saw that, and I was like, I gravitated towards it. But I through the history lesson that I learned through the award ceremony, and I had some one-on-one conversations with Red, and Red was so open and humble to talking about not only his past, but how to improve our show before we even had the show, what he thought we needed to have to make it legit. And he gave some great pointers. But what I realized about him, man, is when you talk about the LVMAs, he was probably one of the first hip hop artists at the LVMAs to win an award. You're talking about at the end of the 2000s, he won awards, like back-to-back awards. Again, they weren't really represented well at the LVMAs hip hop, but then he took kind of like a hiatus. But during his hiatus, it's not that he stopped. What he did was he started networking underground and building the relationships with the people in hip hop, not just from this area, but from, this region, Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey, Boston. And he got to know some real key players. And what he did was he really built the relationship with those people. So it took him 10, 12 years to get to where he is now. So seeing where he is now at that precipice of kind of blowing up, for this area, I think he is probably tops, close to the tops in this area. It's not like it just happened overnight. He put in that grind work for 10, 12 years, even longer, to be honest, longer than that, to get to where he is now. So he took the long road. He took the building relationships, getting to know people, networking. He took what I would call the old school approach to it. And he's done a fantastic job. And now he's at the point where he's building his team that, Take Flight Society, where he has different experts in different avenues that can help his team grow. I think he's doing a great job. Yeah.
Super dope.
Yeah.
Shout out to Red McFly. And if I remember, Nicole had spoke so highly of him in her acceptance speech because he wasn't there to receive the awards.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Drama did, and she's great too. Yeah, I love talking to her. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. I thought FaZe was gonna Kanye the stage when Red won Best Producer.
Maybe it was close.
Could be. We'll see what happens. But this was great. Anything you want to shout out your social or?
Yeah, I mean, it's Movement Moves Media. So Movement Moves Media, Facebook. We're in, maybe we just don't have enough manpower yet for other social platforms, but our website is up to date and has a lot of information on that. www.movementmovesmedia.com. We have the WDIY show, radio show that we have. I'd love to get local talent, entrepreneurs and stuff and artists onto that show as much as possible. And then, I got to give a shout out to Promised Neighborhoods of the Lehigh Valley. They have been, Dr. Batts over there. You talk about the nonprofit world in the Lehigh Valley, which was talking about in the beginning of this, conversation. We talked about that clique, that circle, that's almost impossible to penetrate in this area. That kind of makes the decisions in this city. Dr. Batts has done a great job of building something where he wasn't really accepted, in the nonprofit world. And his board believed in him, Pastor Edwards, Julie Thomas's, and the rest on their board. He built a great board and team, and that board supported him in such a way that, he grew that financially 10 times from when he first started over 5 years, from when he first started to a few $100,000 to now a multi-million-dollar nonprofit, and all for what I would consider great causes. I seen them when they were about to go out of business, basically, and then he took over as executive director and completely turned that around. And now, not only is he supporting his own employees and all the people that they reach in this community, but he's supporting other nonprofits and people that are doing good work too. And to have that done in the space that he's doing it in, where it was never accepted, he wasn't part of the circle, for him to create his own lane, man, shout out to him. Him and the entire team at Promised Neighborhoods. To be honest, our nonprofit wouldn't be where we are without their support too. And now in their space, right by Parquette's, the old Ward's Oriental Rug spot, 333 West Union Street by the train tracks. We're having a sound engineering and DJing class that's going to start in March, where Macville and Bez Music are going to be teaching.
I saw promos about that. Yeah, you'll have to connect me with Bez. I don't know Bez personally, but a lot of people that I talk to bring him up. So,
oh man, he's great, man. I met him when he was 15. Dude talked like he was 30 when he was 15, man. He was like a freshman in high school, and he was just talking about business. This is my vision for the next 10 years. And everything he said when he was 15 is happening and more. He's just a business-minded person.
That's awesome.
And you talk about the pedigree he comes from. So like Jabez Karaskia, his dad is Will. Yeah, so Will was in the music scene for his whole life, and so was his dad. That's what I heard about back in Colombia and stuff like that.
Will was on Eric Rodriguez on Dope Individuals Only podcast.
Yeah.
And that's why, I listened to 106.9. That's my locked in station. That's replaced Power 99 for me, at least when I'm not on my Spotify or something. So I'd love for you to connect us, definitely.
Yeah. I would love to. That would be a great meeting. Yeah, he's a great person. Good energy.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll find the man at Movement Moves Media. This has been another episode of I Will Not Lose podcast. Thank you for staying tuned through that rocky filler episode, but we won't do that again, at least not this year. All right. Thanks for staying tuned, guys. Peace.
Thank you for listening to another episode of I Will Not Lose podcast. To support the show, visit iwillnotlosepodcast.com. You can subscribe to your favorite podcast player, share the episode link, leave a comment. Your contribution is greatly appreciated. And if you're listening in and can't see the QR code for donation, go to tothedesigner.com/links, and there's instructions to donate up there. Thanks so much.